When you were a child, was there a celebrity you idolized? Did you try to collect every piece of merch related to them? Maybe you daydreamed about getting to meet them, or even becoming friends with them. For William J. Jankowski, he did just that. When he was 17, he sent his favorite actor, Patty Duke, a fan letter. To his surprise, she replied. They chatted back and forth, and eventually, a deep personal friendship formed. Now, if you follow me online or have spent any time with me at all, you already know that, like William J. Jankowski, Patty Duke is one of my all-time favorites, and if you know her story, it's not a big surprise as to why. Not only is she a phenomenal actor who is criminally underrated, gays love a good underrated icon, don't we? But aside from her acting, her story is truly inspiring. After a successful run as Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker on Broadway, Patty Duke also conquered the role in the film adaptation, resulting in her becoming the youngest person at the time to win a competitive Oscar. Shortly after, Patty Duke starred in her own TV sitcom titled The Patty Duke Show, where she played identical teenage cousins Patty and Kathy Lane. The show was a hit, and Patty Duke became a 60s teen idol. On the surface, it seemed like Patty was living the charmed life, but behind the scenes, her life was anything but. Born Anna Marie Duke, her acting career was managed by a husband and wife duo named the Rosses. Anna's single mother suffered from what we now know as clinical depression, and the Rosses convinced her that Anna would be better off living with them. According to Anna, they controlled every aspect of her life, abused her in ways I won't even get into, and even robbed her of her own name. Deciding Patty was a better stage name, Anna was simply told one day, "Anna Marie is dead. You're Patty now." When she finally became an adult, Anna, or Patty, broke away from the Rosses and even made the difficult transition from child star to respected adult actor. But again, things behind the scenes were not as bright. Her erratic behavior often put her personal life and sometimes even her professional life in turmoil. It wasn't until 1982 when she was properly diagnosed as bipolar. Her career continued through the 1980s, even becoming the president of the Screen Actors Guild, a title her son Sean Astin just recently took on. In 1987, Patty Duke released a memoir. Titled Call Me Anna, she let the public know all about her troubled childhood and personal struggles. She even publicly came out as bipolar, something very few celebrities did at the time. In 1990, Call Me Anna was adapted into a TV movie, and Patty played herself, painfully reenacting her struggles with mental illness. Patty's career continued throughout the years, as well as her strong advocacy for mental health. In 2016, Anna Marie Patty Duke Pierce tragically passed away at the age of 69. 2 years later, William J. Jankowski announced that before Patty Duke passed away, she, along with his help, wrote a final memoir. In the Presence of Greatness, My 60-Year Journey as an Actress chronicles Patty's career in the entertainment industry, including her infamous feud with Lucille Ball, her friendship with Sharon Tate, who was tragically a victim of the Manson family murders, her interactions with Judy Garland on the set of Valley of the Dolls, as well as many other stories and tidbits from her career. I sit down and have a chat with William where he tells me all about his unique friendship with the star, how the book came to be, as well as some stories that didn't make it into the book. If you were ever told not to meet your heroes, this interview tells the other side of that argument. So without further ado, my interview with William J. Jankowski. Do you have a favorite movie of hers?
I have favorites, plural. It's hard for me to pick one. Of course, The Miracle Worker would be one of them. Valley of the Dolls. She would never say that, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think without her performance, some of it would be a pretty dull movie. You had to kind of go over. She got a lot of flack for going over the top, but with lines like that, how can you not?
Yeah.
So, but you played straight. So, uh, My Sweet Charlie, Me Natalie was one I watched again last night.
Oh, I love that one.
It was a quest for me as a teenager to find that movie. It was hard to find. It was never on video or anything, at least not in the States. So I remember there was an official Patty Duke page that is long gone. I had nothing to do with. And I remember there was a guest book on there, and every person who signed the guest book, I'm 16 at the time, by the way. So every person who signed the guest book, I would send like an email to. Their email address was on there. So I'm like, can you tell me what Patty Duke movies you have, kind of thing. And one of them wrote me Natalie, and I was like, holy, so they were nice enough to send me a copy. I remember her name was Jackie. She lived in Las Vegas, and so it was 29 years ago yesterday. I finally got to see it when I was 16. So yeah, that was really cool, and she was great in that. She should have been Oscar nominated, but at least she got a Golden Globe. But I'm
Yeah,
glad
that is.
glad it finally made it to DVD and Blu-ray, and it was after her passing. And I'd actually recorded a commentary for that, but there was some copyright thing or something, so there was no commentary on it. A friend of mine who's good with that stuff, he burned some Blu-rays and some DVDs with my commentary included, for me to have and to give to people or whatever. But yeah.
To this day, so much of her work is really hard to get. Some of it, I'm convinced, is just lost media. Birdbath.
That's the first one. That's the holy grail for Patty Duke fans. I've never seen it. Last year, I was going to UCLA. UCLA has a copy of it,
Oh, really?
but their film and TV archive, whatever they call it there. But it's not transferred. It's on film. They haven't transferred it to videotape because most of the stuff there, if you've ever been, you watch in a VCR in a private room, on VHS. So they weren't willing to transfer it or whatever. I don't know if there's any way to get that to happen. So I had two things that they had I had never seen. So Birdbath was the number one, and the other one was a pilot called A Wing and a Prayer that she did in '94 that was supposed to air as a 2 hour movie, and it got revamped pretty heavily. And it did eventually air as her last series, Amazing Grace. But her character was the same, but a lot of cast was different. And so it was kind of like a long lost Patty Duke actual movie that I'd never
Yeah.
seen. So I was able to watch that at least last year, which was cool. It just pissed me off that I can't get a copy of it. So I just had to go from memory. But I do have a script someone sent me of it. And
Oh, nice.
Bath, I do have an audio of it
Wow.
because a friend several years ago had from Facebook had mailed me. He had recorded it in 1971 of TV when he was like a teenager. It's a really good audio considering the age and everything too. And so I have the whole thing on audio, which is better than nothing for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've never seen, except for still pictures, I've never seen it. And she was very proud of that one too. So that's, like I said, that's the holy grail for most Patty Duke fans. I mean, I have some pretty rare things, but I don't have that.
Yeah. Some of the ones that I have are VHS tapes that are European, so I have to have a special VCR to watch them. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I just did that recently, the few weeks ago, to watch Fatal Judgment. Um,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, Fatal Judgment. Yeah, I recorded that off a Lifetime, I would say in 91-ish. It was a CBS movie from '88, but I didn't become a fan until 1990 when I was 10. So I recorded that off that, and then I do have the Australian VHS copy as well. And then a friend of mine who's a bit older than me, he lent me and I copied it, his CBS original broadcast.
Oh,
So
nice.
which includes a cool Entertainment Tonight on the set interview with her. So that was cool.
Oh,
The
cool.
Yeah. So
How did you get into Patty Duke?
yeah, it's a good question. It's one I get asked a lot since she was not of my generation. She was of my parents' generation. She was what, 33.5 years older than me. When I was a kid, when I was 8, I remember on Nick at Night, the Patty Duke show came on. I started watching different things on Nick at Night, and I always loved the old stuff. I Love Lucy was always a favorite show of mine, and when they started showing things, I started really liking like the Donna Reed show and all these things of again my parents' generation, not mine, from 25 years earlier or whatever. And the Patty Duke show came on, and I remember when I was 8, I thought it was really two different people, Patty and Kathy. I didn't know that it was, like, and I remember seeing like, I know who Patty Duke is, like who Patty is, but who plays Kathy? I remember like I was stupid. So
No, 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 that happened.
so it just goes to show what a good job she did, even at such a, the age of 16, to make people believe that she was really two people.
Yeah.
Then I remember learning about Helen Keller in school, and we didn't watch The Miracle Worker in school, but I remember my mom telling me about the movie The Miracle Worker, so I think I rented it from the local VHS video store. And I remember her telling me too that there was a remake where she played Amy Sullivan that I got to see later on. And then what really cinched it for me, for some reason, I was fascinated when I saw that her life story was being turned into a TV movie, Call Me Anna. Her 1987 autobiography 3 years later was televised with her playing herself. And I don't know why I was just really, really fascinated and excited about that. Was I hadn't read the book. I only knew her from I think The Miracle Worker, Patty Duke Show, and the Jessica McClure movie where the baby in the well. I remember
Everybody's baby or
his
yeah.
baby. Yep, yep. Because I remember my mother pointed to me that that's Patty Duke, because I hadn't seen her post Patty Duke show, I guess. So those are the only things I'd seen. And would call me Anna. I just became riveted. I was 10 years old. I just became completely riveted from the first scene where she's kind of going, in her words, crazy. She would say that. And the backstory, and I really like the reenactments of the Miracle Work of the Patty Duke Show, things I'd actually seen them reenacting them. I thought was like fun thing to do, and I just fell in love then. And I'm just like, I have to know everything about this woman as possible. So I went out, again, I'm 10. I went out and had my dad buy me at Walden Books the book that was based on the following weekend at the mall. And I started reading it in fifth grade. So I'm this fifth grade kid, in 1990, 1991, and carrying around a copy of Patty Duke's autobiography, which, I'm sure made the teachers, laugh and be like, "Oh, this is a gay boy in the happening." Yeah, it was. So that's how I got like started, and then I would just look at the TV guide every week and just point. And I remember I wish there was some way I could just type in her name and find any TV listings. So now I kind of wish the old way. I miss the hunt sometimes, and I would go to like the Suncoast Video, if you ever had that,
Oh
in the
yeah.
malls back in the day. And I just look around. They have catalogs you could buy with their stuff you could order. And I would just look to see, I would just look on all the shelves and go like this, and just see if anything came out. I remember that's how I saw Billy for the first time. I didn't even know it was been released in VHS. I was going to see the movie JFK, so this was 91, next door in the movie theater, and I saw that there. I made my dad buy it because I'd never seen it, and again, didn't even know it was on video. That was really cool. And I didn't even want to see JFK. I just want to go home and watch Billy. Yeah, so that just started whenever a new TV movie, I get super excited, and I'd cut out clippings and memorize reviews if they were positive, and stuff. And to this day, I remember some of the TV Guide reviews from over 30 years ago. I could recite them. It was an event for me when a new Patty Duke movie was to come on TV. It was just super cool, and I just like wanted to meet her so badly. And I still remember watching a movie of hers from the 80s, and she's dialing a phone, her character, and I was like wishing that she would dial my number. It's just like just stupid.
We were talking beforehand that I had met her once, and it turns out you were there.
Yeah, isn't that something? Yeah, that was 11 years
14,
ago. 11 years ago. Yeah,
2014.
yeah,
So
yeah. Hmm.
it still feels like yesterday. Like I can remember that day. I've met many, I live in LA. I've met many celebrities. I like meeting celebrities. I'm never someone that like is nervous about meeting celebrities, maybe excited. Patty Duke was the only one that I've ever like actually thought like maybe I shouldn't, because she meant so much to me. I was like, it's impossible for her. It's unreasonable for someone to live up to the expectations that I have of this person. And I've met people who've worked with her and they all say like, no, she's the real thing. Like, and I remember when I met her, she was so kind, and you could tell that she was trying so hard to make a connection with me, because I wanted something to impress her, and I was very shy back then. I'm still very shy, but you really had to push me out of my shell back then.
Okay.
And I wanted to impress her, so I was like, I want to find something really unique that's not Valley of the Dolls or Patty Duke or Miracle. So I found this by design poster, and I remember the way the table was set up. It was, I had to write my name down on a post-it, and then they put it on the poster, and then they hand it to her. Oh, that was you?
That was the posted idea was me. Yeah, yeah. Go
Oh.
ahead. Yeah.
So I brought my friend with me, and I hand the poster over, and then I'm watching her, and she unrolls it, and she just like her face drops and she mouths, "Oh my God." And then like a complete dweeb, I walk up and I go, "Are you impressed?" And I could tell she kept mentioning things about the movie. And I don't know why. I would, I kind of, I was very shy, so I kind of shut down. I didn't say much. And the thing I remember the most about her is I could tell she wasn't sure if I was a fan of her or a fan of the movie. So she was trying to give me something, and she kept talking. You could tell she was trying to remember everything she could about this movie to say something to me.
Oh
And
wow.
that meant so much to me. And I wrote her a letter. I just hand wrote a letter to her, and in the letter I referred to her as Anna, and I just wrote like how much she meant to me, and personal struggles, and how she's a survivor, and she gives me strength, and this and that. I didn't have the guts to give it to her, but my friend took it from me and gave it to Mike because he was there. And so I know she got the letter. I didn't put like an email or a phone number or anything. So I know she ended up getting the letter,
She
but
definitely would have read it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so that was the Hollywood show back in 2014, like we said, a convention. Yeah, and I
yes.
assisted her at most of those conventions. I think it was only one I didn't assist her at. We really liked that show too. I remember talking about that afterwards. That was the last show I did with her too. That's the last show she ever did.
Well, I'm
Um,
glad I went.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was by pure luck,
She was gone
totally.
less than 2 years later. So
Yeah.
by that point, we had already agreed we were going to be working on the book together, but that was later in the year we worked on it. But yeah.
When I was getting ready to do the concept of interviewing people, I knew one of the people I wanted to interview was you for multiple reasons. One, I'm a huge Patty Duke fan, and I know that you have personal stories and you're linked to her with the book, but also you as a person, I find very interesting because you kind of lived every gay boy's dream, which is you found your idol and actually became personal friends with this person. You're the exception of the don't meet your heroes warning.
I always think that that's funny about the don't meet your heroes. Is I always thinking like, well, sometimes yeah, it is a good thing. Uh, I'm sure there are horror stories where it's not from certain people with different actors and whatever. But yeah, for me, it was exceeded my expectations. It really, really did. She took a liking to me right away. And we just, it was almost like a mother-son thing. I think she felt very maternal toward me. And then I think as the years grew and I got older, I think it grew into more of a friendship. Yeah, it was. There isn't a day, and I'm not exaggerating, there isn't a day that goes by with her gone almost 10 years now where I don't think about how goddamn lucky I was, for all those years and all the time that I get to spend with her and all the stories that are in my head. That really terrific woman, not just actress, that's a given, but like a really terrific woman and person, humanitarian. I don't usually say the word blessed, but like I do feel it occurs to me with that. I really was blessed. And, I'm glad that there is physical proof of that in the book with our work together. But it was just a blast those years. I mean, I was just treated like one of the family, and it was truly extraordinary. It really was.
How did you meet her?
So so when I was 18, which would be 1998, I was a senior in high school. And I knew she lived in Idaho from talk show appearances and whatever. And I happened to go to my local Barnes and Noble, and I saw they had a celebrity address book, like a big, phone book looking thing. And so I looked up her name in there, and there was an Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho address, which I knew she lived in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Because she had filmed a series there a few years earlier. And so I'm like, what the hell? What do I have to lose? So I wrote a letter, a very sincere letter. I wish I had had a copy of it that I saved, but anyway, it was very sincere, and included my recent senior, like a wallet-sized senior photo of me from my high school, and some VHSs of some things that I figured she might not have, maybe of hers that maybe she'd want. Like I remember, I think Ben Casey was one of them, and I don't remember what the other ones were, but anyway, there was like maybe two or three VHS tapes in there. And I wrote a letter, and at the end of the email, at the end of the letter, I included my email address. And I mailed it off. At the time, I was having problems. The computers were crashing. This is the 90s. That'll happen all the time. And so my friend was checking my email for me because you didn't have your phones or anything. If your computer was dead, that was
Yeah.
it. I couldn't even log in at school or anything, I don't think. So my friend was checking. I gave her my password. She was checking my emails for me. And like roughly 5 days or so after I mailed the package out, this is before I had a cell phone too, mind you. So I just remember sitting on the bus and just thinking that like something was going to happen today. I'm not lying. So I just remember thinking like something was going to happen today. Like something, I just had this weird feeling. And then when I get home, my dad was like, call Carrie. Like she's called you like 6 times and she won't tell me what it is, but she's like, call the second you get in the door. So I called her and she was like, again, she was the one who was checking the emails for me. And she's like, oh my God, like they wrote back to you. So it was like, holy wow, like her husband, Mike Pierce, wrote back to me. And to paraphrase, they had read the letter, thought it was the nicest fan letter they'd ever read. And, we have your email. Here's our email. Let's keep in touch, kind of thing. And I was just like floored. I had to print out the email. I wish I still knew where it was. But I was just, that was just like a dream come true. Like, oh my God, she knows who I am. There's been contact. She's read my email, whatever. She's seen my picture, there is contact. Like, oh my God. So they were on AOL. I was on AOL. Instant message was built into AOL back then. So we would IM each other on there and stuff. And then I had asked if she'd done, because back in those days, the celebrity chats were pretty big, that
Oh yeah.
AOL host or whoever, and with a moderator and all that. So I asked, I hadn't even met her yet. And it was just, if, some emails back and forth at this point. And I asked her if she would be interested in doing one, that I could host. So she said, sure. So we did. I remember it was April of 1998. We did a live chat where I created a different screen name for them, so their screen name wouldn't be known, to the public, their AOL screen name, and hosted the chat. And I moderated. I had people ask. I invited about 20-ish people in there, and had in a private chat room. And I asked, okay, so and so, ask your question, kind of moderate it like that. And then I later edited it where it was more cohesive. We thought it was going to be about an hour, but it wound up being about 2.5 hours she wound up dedicating, which was amazing. And again, I didn't even met her yet. I was still in high school at this point. I just shy of turning 18. So yeah, I was 17 when we first made contact. So yeah, it was unbelievable. And then they were about to do the Patty Duke reunion movie up in Montreal. And so she gave me the email address of the Jim Green, who was the producer of that. And he produced a couple of her previous movies as well, like A Killer Among Friends and No Child of Mine. So he put me in contact with her. So he's giving me like updates with some plot details and this and that, whatever. And then fast forward to the end of the year, like in December 98, he invited me up to the set in Canada to meet her and to like get to see her like act on the set, playing Patty and Kathy Lane again after 30 some years. So that was just talk about surreal. So I flew up there, and again, my friend Carrie, she took the train in from her college in upstate New York, and we spent the weekend, on the set. We met almost all the cast members who were back for the movie. I remember my dad was with us too because I had never flown by myself before, so we took him. And he was having a drink, having a beer with Eddie Applegate, who played Richard the boyfriend at the hotel bar. And then we turn around and see William Shallert or Paul O'Keefe, who played the brother. It was just really surreal. It's like everywhere we turned, there was, somebody from the Patty Duke show there in the hotel, in the lobby or whatever. And we went on the set and they were filming a scene, and I was watching from right behind the cameras. I remember her traveling dog, Cricket, who was a little Yorkie she had with her. And Jim told me about that, and Jim let me hold Cricket. So she did, a few takes or whatever. Then it was time to, change reels or whatever it was. And so she came back and she was looking, I don't know if she was like, is that him? Or because I think she knew of my coming that day, or, who the hell is this holding my dog, And, she just looked at me, and I think I handed the dog over to this Cricket over to somebody else. And before anybody could say anything, Jim, the producer, literally got in between us, and he said, Anna, I'd like you to meet Billy Jankowski, and moved away. And then she looked at me with like love in her eyes and says, oh, there you are. And then she gave me a big bear hug. And then she says, "Ah, what the hell? You came all the way to Canada," and she gave me another big hug. So that was really cool. It's really surreal. Again, I used to keep using the word surreal, but it's the best word to just adjective for this. So
It feels surreal just hearing the story. It's like this
yeah,
is a dream.
this
This is a
really,
dream.
and getting to see her on a set, and like cool for me forever to be able to see that scene in that movie and know I was there, and that was my initial meeting in between takes with her. And then between takes, she would come and look at my album, and she'd be like, "Oh, this is where I did this, or this is that." And I remember correcting her when she got one wrong. And so she's like, "Oh, this is where I play the President of the United States." I'm like, "No, it's not. This is Karen's song, another sitcom she did." I'm like, I flipped a few pages. I'm like, "This is where you play the President of the United States." I just remember she's like, "When do you find time to eat or sleep?" She said. So yeah, so we hung out, for however long that took. Then she went away to do another scene somewhere, and Jim took me, the producer, took me and Carrie to the trailer, the producer's trailer, because they had dailies to look at, the stuff they had filmed the previous days. So I got to watch the dailies. I got to watch all the rough cuts of things, which is really cool in the trailer. And I wish I had a copy of those, because they did the Romeo and Juliet scene that they did, was already filmed. I have to say it was a lot funnier than the final cut was, but it was just really cool seeing her, that it was cool seeing her curse when she'd mess up, where she'd mouth shit or something like that. And so yeah, so we were doing that. Then from there we went up to lunch, which was in the gymnasium in a different building, but on the College of Montreal campus. And so we're sitting there. I wasn't expecting her to be there. So I was sitting there, helped myself to the buffet, whatever we were doing. Then all of a sudden she comes in. She had a big black smock on over her costume to protect, her costume. And she's like, "I was looking for you. I was wondering where you were." I said, "Oh, Jim," who was also at the table, the producer. I said, "Jim, we were watching the dailies with Jim." She's like, "What?" So then she turned and said, yelled, "Hey, Jim, you son of a bitch, you let them watch the dailies and not me." But I just remember her sitting down next to me, us going up for dessert together, me picking something that I did not like that I thought I would have liked, and her eating it off my plate, and also her taking my food because it was real plates and glasses. It wasn't paper plates or anything. So I remember her taking my plate and scraping it, like a mom would or something, into the trash, whatever I didn't eat at the end. And it was, again, we just kind of chatted during lunch there. And then we went to go watch her film another scene afterwards. And that was the day, basically. Then we went back to the hotel. And Kara and I were just kind of walking around the hotel, and we had seen William Shallert, who, of course, played her father, Papo, on the Patty Duke Show. And we were talking with him, and we went to go get a picture with him. So Carrie was taking the picture with her camera. We were getting, into the shot when all of a sudden Anna pops in. She had just come from the set with her driver and cricket in her hand, and so she literally pops into the picture and kind of photobombs, but the three of us, so my first picture with her too, like, so the three of us are in the lobby at the of St. Elizabeth Hotel in Montreal, and then she had asked what we were doing the next day because it was a weekend. Production was off, and I said, "I don't know, I don't know." She's like, "Well, I'd like you to come up to my hotel room tomorrow night at, is 7 o'clock okay?" And she gave me a room number, which I remember was 2020. And she had like the suite, penthouse or whatever there. And I was like, wow. So she says, "We'll call you tomorrow, with an exact time, but probably around 7 or so. So we'll call your room." I gave them my room number. And then sure enough, the next day they called and we set it up, and we went up there at 7 o'clock. And then Carrie and I, we were greeted with, hugs and kisses from Anna, and her husband Mike was there, who we also met on the set. Wonderful human being, he still is. And her son Kevin, who had just turned 10. And they had a birthday party because Kevin's birthday was late November, is late November. Hers was mid-December. This is right between. This was December 6th. So they had a joint birthday party while they were together in Canada. And so there's like birthday balloons and stuff that around. And then we sit down at the coffee table in the living area. And then we were both handed, Carrie and I were both handed gift bags. And I thought she was just showing us, "Oh, look what Mike or Kevin got me for my birthday," since they just had the celebration there. And no, it was actually Christmas gifts for us.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, she bought me a watch. We were in Canada. The Little Prince, which I used to watch on Nickelodeon as a kid, with the cartoon, was very popular up there, or I guess originates from, I guess. And so she bought me a beautiful watch of the Little Prince, and she bought Carrie a Little Prince pin. And there was very lovely notes on the stationery, hotel stationery, that were tucked inside the gift bags. And let me see if I remember. Mine said, "Dearest Billy, how wonderful to spend time with you on and off the set. Thank you for all your loving support, Anna." And then we spent the next she said, we could only do this till 8:30, 7 to 8:30, an hour and a half, which was so, I'm like, "Oh my God, I get a whole hour and a half," because I have to be up at work. She had to be up in Sparkle, the next morning at 5 a.m., whatever. But when 7:30 rolled around, I mean, when 8:30 rolled around, I looked at the clock and I didn't want to leave, but I didn't want out. overstay my welcome. So I mentioned to her, oh, it's 8:30, and she's like, "Oh, forget that. I'm having too much fun. Stay." So I wound up staying till 10. We wound up staying 3 hours. So she signed like probably like 70 some autographs for us and for friends and like for whatever. And then she would just like start giving us things to sign. That she gave me her that white sign that's what I'm pointing to right now.
Yeah.
Hard to read from here, but it says Pate Duck on there. It's on an old
Yes.
time box. And she gave that to me. That was her sign when her greeter, her driver at the airport had for her when she picked her up in Canada, in Montreal. And then it says Pate Duck, and then she signed it for me on the bottom, the Montreal pronunciation of Patty Duke. So she gave that to me. She gave me some signed scripts from the movie, some call sheets that included her home phone number on it, all this really cool stuff. And I was just like, oh my God. Again, I got 3 hours. We took photos, of course. Like I said, like all these autographs, she's like signing everything, whatever. And so it was just amazing. I just like, holy, I'm 18 years old and, living out this like fantasy and even better than I had imagined. It was just so freaking cool. And again, after the 3 hours were up at 10 o'clock, we said our goodbyes and she kissed us and said, planes fly to Idaho too, as we left her room. So, yeah, it was just like so frigging amazing. Even talking about it almost, what is it, 25, 26, 27 years later, well more than doubled my life since then, but it's still just so friggin' cool that that happened. And I'm so glad that was my first meeting with her. That was special versus, let's say, like a stage door or something like that, which would be really cool, which I wouldn't have complained about. But it's really nice that I had like such a special first meeting with her.
It's a known fact that her birth name is Anna. How long before you dropped Patty and started calling her Anna?
Um, I would always refer to her as Patty before I met her. After I met her, she just seemed more of an Anna to me than a Patty. And I know that's what she went by, so it was a process for me. I don't think I ever called her, I know I never called her Patty to her face, which she wouldn't have minded, but I know that never happened. But it was a process for me after I started, I had to think, that Anna, which I know she always joked a lot of people after she wrote the book, that kind of went through the same thing. But now I just think of her as Anna now, not as, Patty Duke is the actress, Anna was the person, and they are one but also separate. And so it wasn't that difficult for me to do that. And again, by the time I met her in person, 'cause I'd been calling her Anna in the IMs and emails and stuff, I think I was okay to call her Anna by the time we met in Canada that time. Yeah.
I remember in her first book, she said her first husband couldn't even do it.
Yeah,
And
Pat.
yeah.
Pat. Yeah.
How do you go from meeting someone that you idolize to actually working with them?
um, um, the conventions, you mean? You want to start there with the
Sure. I
sisterhood?
mean, because I know that you did a lot of archival stuff.
Yeah,
You did
yeah.
the spark. You worked with the Sparkle Patty Sparkle.
Marcusis with that, yeah. With the shows, which the first one I did with her was in 2010. Well, in 2008, she did the first one, which was in California, a Hollywood show. One was in Burbank. I couldn't make it to that one, so they hired an assistant. They knew that I went to these shows as a fan. I never worked one before, but I knew a lot of the ins and outs and different things of them. So, they were asking her and Mike were asking questions and opinions for me and stuff. I went through my photo archives and I sent a bunch to the person who was assisting them and emailed a bunch where they had copies made and they chose different things and whatever from my photos. 2 years later, when they were doing Chiller Theater in New Jersey, which is only a little over an hour from where I live, they asked if I would do it because they knew that I was is drivable for me, and they knew I knew my shit when it came to Patty Duke and stuff, and that I would be a good like protector of her, and I knew what I was doing. And again, I never worked one of these before. I'd only been one as a fan, to pay to get in. So that was really cool. I set the prices we agreed on. We wanted to be fair and be very low. We kind of lowballed it. We were a lot cheaper than a lot of other people were there. And she was great. The first night or two, she really spent so much time with people like you were describing that the lines are really, really long. So after a couple times, she kind of figured out how to manage the time a little more, still make people feel special, but, send them on their way a little sooner than she had been, kind of thing. But she loved it. Like she had a great time. Like I think there's a line in the book where she says, a lot of people think these shows are a drag, but she had fun doing them and meeting the fans. She said, when you're doing movies, you don't get to meet the fans. You're on a set. And it was also fun for her to meet a lot of these things, former co-stars of her, and she hadn't seen in decades sometimes, and get reacquainted with them and reminisce and whatnot. So she had a good time at those shows. She really did, and she was great with the people. I mean, people would be like, "Can you talk to my mom on the phone? Can you leave my outgoing voicemail?" And she would do all that stuff.
Ugh.
And
I wish I had the nerve.
oh yeah, 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 yeah. I wish I had her do my outgoing voicemail. But and then even when we'd be together, I mean, a lot of people wouldn't recognize her when we'd go to like a restaurant or something like that. I remember doing one of those shows in Maryland outside of Baltimore in 2011, and we were at all places. I think it was an IHOP we were at for breakfast, and it was the day after the show ended for the weekend, I believe, the convention, and we were just there having breakfast. We were waiting for a table. It was quite busy in there, and we were sitting on the bench. Her and I are sitting next to each other on the bench, and someone starts singing, like maybe like a 40-ish-year-old woman, started singing the theme to the Patty Duke show. And she mumbles to me, she's like, "Holy shit, am I imagining what I'm hearing or not?" And I'm like, "No, you're not." So she turns to her and she smiles at, she's like, "Are you Patty Duke?" And she says, "Yes, I am." And she's like, "Oh my God, da, 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 da." So that was cool. And she was always so kind and gracious and took pictures or she wanted an autograph, anything like that. She was always great with her fans. That I loved seeing too. It wasn't phony with her. Like she really did adore her fans. She had a thing where she's like, me writing my name on a piece of paper, if that makes somebody's day or whatever, like that's wonderful, and the fact that I get all this love from complete strangers, like, you can't beat that.
I was just recently rereading the book. That's why I reached out to you. It was fresh in my mind. Of her books, the one that you worked on, In the Present of Greatness, it seems to be the book that I go back to of hers the most. And I think one of the reasons, if not the reason, is the way it reads. It feels less like a book and more like a journal entry.
Hmm.
And it feels so personal. Like Call Me Anna is a great book and I've read it more than once, but it's a story. It has a through line. This feels like someone left me stories. How did this book come to be?
For years, I wanted to write a book about her because, I mean, I was an English teacher and I was a right, I had my degree in writing and everything. I was always scared to ask her because I would break my heart if she said no. Like it would devastate me because I just wanted that. It was like a dream. One dream of mine was to meet her in this whole relationship, but like another, like, let's take this little step further would be to write a book with her. I asked her at one point, maybe a couple years before, but it was like kind of an half-ass asked, and I got a half-ass answer basically. But she was doing in 2014. I write about this in the book, in my own words, in the introduction. She was doing a play for charity, Christmas play. Her and both Mike were
Oh,
doing.
her and Mike. I remember seeing that on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah, he was playing Santa Claus and she was playing Mrs. Claus. It was a musical review in their local town in Idaho there. So they invited me and my boyfriend Vinny to stay with them in their home and go to the show. So anyway, so we were there for the weekend, and her birthday was during that time, her 67th birthday, so we got to celebrate that, which was really cool. I'd never been with her on her birthday before. And then the last night there, we were putting up the tree. She had a pre-lit tree from Costco that she bought, so we were putting that up. And Vinny, my boyfriend, is much better with that stuff than I am with anything. Like for her and Mike, the guys were doing that, and her and I were chatting away. So then we're decorating that. She asked us for help decorating their tree, so we did. We're sitting in our pajamas pretty much. She goes out into the kitchen. I follow her out there, and I kind of thinking like now or never to myself. And I asked her. I said, "You told me all these years we've known each other, all these great stories about all these people you worked with and different projects you were involved with. I think it needs to be a book because one day you're not going to be around forever and these stories will die with you," is how I said it. And, I didn't, yeah, I was kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much what would have happened, to be honest. So I said, "Some of these stories you tell me," I said, "we really need to write them down. And nobody knows more about your career than I do. What do you say?" And she thought for a second and she's like, that sounds wonderful. I think we could be a real good team. Let's do it. So then we started to try to think of a time. This was in late 2013. So we're starting to think of a time, the following year where I could fly out there and we could work on it together. Then she was supposed to do, we had it set up and then she was supposed to do the tour of Pippin, which she bowed out of because of health reasons. So we wound up going to her home and I spent 8 days there. I had a newly purchased iPad, which I recorded her on. We sat around her couch or on her bed or at her kitchen table, wherever around her house. It's just the two of us. Vinny, my boyfriend, and Mike would leave us alone and go do whatever. And while we worked a basically a more or less a 9 to 5 day, we did where I'd interview her, record her, I'd show her video clips, I would, show her some still photographs before talking about a certain person or project to again jog her memory. So that's what we did for, 8 days. We basically put in 8 hours a day for 8 days and got all those recordings. I don't know how many hours of recordings. And then, after it was over, I went home and molded it into a book, listened to the audio, typed it word for word first, and then later changed the phrasing around, had friends look at it to edit it, that kind of thing. Eventually, when I was done with a couple of chapters, when I felt that they were good enough to show her anyway, I emailed them to her, and then she called me right away after just reading one. She started with the Anne Bancroft chapter, I remember. I read about this in the book too. Like I picked up the phone and I said hello. I know it was her on the caller ID, and she says, "Is this Bill Jankowski, best-selling author?" So and I was like, "Oh, thank God she liked it." And then it was just more on from there, and email and chapters back and forth, and her giving her edits, and which wasn't a lot, but her ideas, and maybe take this out or maybe put this in. Then we did a few more phone. There was a few more things I wanted to do that I didn't get tied up in Idaho there, so we continued some phone conversations that I recorded, in the ensuing months there. Then again, it was just kind of on me to just kind of turn it into the book. And things were just put on the back burner mostly because of her health deteriorating. I mean, it was pretty bad when we were working on the book, but it only got worse. I mean, the last time I saw her was that week in her house working on the book. She wound up passing away about a year and a half after we worked on the book. And after a few months, I asked her husband Mike for permission to forge on with the project and look for a publisher, and which he gave his full blessing. And so I wound up going to a small publisher who Bear Manor, who I've read lots of things from before, and was definitely a niche publisher for, again, like older Hollywood and that kind of thing is what they're known for. And so I figured it was a good fit, and he bought it right away. And I was given like pretty free reign. I mean, I had an editor and stuff they assigned me, but I was given a lot of freedom with the book, which is nice. So it's exactly how I wanted it to be, how I envisioned it. You mentioned something which I mentioned in the book in my introduction that I write. We wanted it to be like conversations. We wanted to be like sitting down with a friend, less formal than your average autobiography. She had already done the autobiography. She had
Yeah.
already done that. So it was kind of like, what's the point? Well, let's give different perspectives here. Some of the same stories, but again, perspective from 30 years after the book. She's 30 years older. 30 years
Right.
to look back on things, change your mind, like Valley of the Dolls, for example. We wound up dedicating 6 chapters to that. You read Call Me Anna from 1987, you'd be afraid to mention that movie to her by the way she wrote about it in that book. And I think that's what we got. That's what I've gotten over from you and from many people, that it's like a nice conversational tone, that it feels like you're in the room with her telling these stories. And it's funny because I could hear her telling the stories. I mean, I have all the audio recordings, but I could hear all that too, when I read it. And I didn't know if that was just because of me, because I was there. But yeah, I do like the tone that we have with the conversational tone that we took with the book and we both agreed upon.
I mean, I have to say, I am genuinely impressed that you wrote the book based on her recordings because I would have bet dollars to donuts that these were just handwritten journal entries that were typed up. I never would have guessed. And I mean, it just shows the friendship you had with her. It shows how well you knew her.
I think that for me is the greatest accomplishment is that her voice is so, and that's what she said to me too when she first read the chapter. I could hear myself in this. I remember her saying, quote, "It sounds like me." So yeah, if nothing else could be achieved by that book, that I was able to capture her voice. Now, some things I some things are verbatim, but of course I had to change things, to mold it. I had to move things into different spots or whatever, from what they were in the audio. And then some stuff I filled in for background, in her words, but filled them in where it would sound like her talking, though it was really me writing that particular sentence to give, like, let's say, a plot detail that she didn't give her about a movie or something like that. Or maybe some award information that she wasn't big on, but I knew about, this got nominated for this, and this, or whatever, something like
Right.
that. I would bring in there for perspective. But no, it was her.
I can't say it enough. It's a great book. I go back to it, and it's such a great archives because you could be watching one of the movies that she's
Right.
done, and then I get to go and be
That's
like,
fun.
yeah,
That's
like
fun.
what did she say about this movie? I mean,
Right, right. And as a fan, I love that for anything. And that's why, again, the way the book is broken up in chapters where it's either a person, we go chronologically. We were going to do alphabetically at first, and then we're like, let's go chronologically. So the people she worked with and whatnot. So, it starts at Kim Stanley, maybe, and then, it goes on until her doing Glee, just a few years before her death. That we do have an index in the back, but it's also easy to find something. Okay, I just saw on YouTube you posted about Two in a Bench. Well, there's a chapter on Two in a Bench in here.
yes,
You could refer to on page whatever.
yes,
So I do like that as a fan, being able to go and look at that stuff, and yeah, that's my favorite thing to do, not just with Patty Duke, but with anybody, is
yeah,
to be able to see their feelings about a project while watching it or right after I watch it. I always look up stuff after seeing a movie, for the first time or whatever, because I just like to get all that background knowledge of it, behind the scenes if possible stuff. So yeah, like By Design, we did a chapter in that, which I knew a lot of what she told me, from knowing about her career and from her telling me stuff in the past. But like I didn't know By Design was filmed in the winter of 1980 when John Lennon was assassinated during the
yeah.
middle of that, and that kind of put a damper on her, on the set of that. I didn't know that until she told me about that. There was things like the show Amazing Grace, which is her last television series 30 years ago already on NBC. I didn't know she had a botched facelift before that.
Oh God, I just recently went through that chapter again into
Yeah.
like detail. Like it's not
Yeah, it's not
gory,
gory. It's not
but
gory, but it's, graphic enough that it needs to be, that it
like
has
yeah,
to.
she did not hold back in these stories. That's one thing I wanted to point out. Like this is not
Right,
a
right.
saccharine sanitized.
Afterwards, I remember her saying to me when we hit the stop button on the record on the iPad for that chapter, I remember her taking my hand and saying, "I'm sorry, I know I've really given you a lot right now." She could see I was like, "Whoa," like that, like if she blew me away with something with all my knowledge, like
Mhm.
wow. So, yeah. She also, though, didn't want it to be a salacious book, and I don't think it is.
No,
Uh, there's very little, which maybe some people don't find it juicy enough, but there were some people that she talked about to me, celebrity wise, that she didn't like very much, but she didn't want that to be a focus in the book. She wanted it to be about her love, like the title, In the Presence of Greatness, which is a title I came up with after she passed. But she wanted it to be positive. She let me see if I could quote exactly what she said. She said, "If I have to say something negative about someone, I want there to be a reason behind it, not to just say it."
right.
Like, for example, I know she didn't like Barbara Streisand. Barbara Streisand was very mean to her. But
Really?
we're gonna put that in the book. Yeah, she didn't want that in the book
I
twice.
knew there was something about her I didn't like.
Anna was a huge Barbara Streisand fan. Huge. Had all the records. Loved her. Loved her. Loved her. So she's like, it was in the early 70s. She couldn't remember what it was, but I think I know where it was. She's like, we were at something together. And I went up to her. I never met her. I'm like, Miss Streisand, like, lovely to meet you. I'm Patty Duke. I'm a huge fan of yours. I just love your work. She said, Barbara looked at me, gave me a dirty look, and turned her head away from me, didn't acknowledge my presence. So she's kind of like, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she had a bad day, whatever. So then a few years later, they were again at the same thing again. She's like, let me try it again. Introduced herself again, said what a big fan what she was. She said she did the same thing. Looked at her, turned her head away from her. And she's like, I went home that night and I threw in all those that bitch's albums, I threw out.
Again,
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
meet your heroes. That's
Yeah,
what,
yeah. That's a perfect example of it. Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think the first time probably was the Golden Globes when Anna won for Me, Natalie. She won against Barbara Streisand too. So, because Barbara was up for Hello Dolly, but Anna won for Me, Natalie. Then the other time, I'm thinking it might have been the I Love Liberty special, the Norman Lear special from '82, because they
Oh,
were
that long later, the one that she did with
yeah,
Desi Arnaz.
yes, yes, yes. So they weren't in the same skit, but they were both there at the same time, whatever. And it must have been interesting because they had to share dressing rooms, and Anna shared a dressing room with Jane Fonda. So that,
Who I
yeah,
love.
And then in Jerry Jewell's book, she wrote that whoever she was assigned to dressing room with didn't want to share a dressing room with her. She didn't name who it was. So Anna overheard this and said, "You're going to share our dressing room." And so it was Jerry Jewell, Patty Duke, and Jane Fonda in the same dressing room. So, because
Oh
Jerry
my
Jewell,
God.
I think Anna wrote the forward to her book too, so Jerry Jewell's. Yeah, and then there was a story too that I'll tell you, but because I don't find anything wrong with it. I like it, but she
Okay.
didn't. She thought it made Meg Ryan look bad, but I don't think it does. I disagree with her on this.
Okay.
That when they made Prelude to a Kiss back in the summer of '91, they were filming that like in Illinois, outside Chicago. She was doing Last Wish, a TV movie, and I was doing in Toronto at Marine Stapleton at the same time and going back and forth between the two sets in Illinois and Toronto. And, Meg Ryan was very nice. She didn't seem very impressed that I was Patty Duke, and nor did she have to be, kind of thing she was saying. But, she's like, whatever, she wasn't like fawning over her or anything. She said, then I went back to Toronto, then I came back. And then I went into the makeup trailer and she was reading Call Me Anna. And she looked up at me and she's like, Frank Sinatra? Like that. And, and then she, kind of her opinion on her changed. Not opinion, but, she kind of geeked down on her, I guess, after that. I don't know why. I thought that was a cool story.
That's a
She didn't.
great story.
All right, this is a story. I don't know if I should tell, but I'm going to tell it.
Okay.
A really cool story. I'll give you an exclusive here. I was not here for this, but she told me about this. Back in 2010, we were attending a Valley of the Dolls screening in Chicago, and which was a lot of fun. A bunch of us afterwards went out to dinner at a restaurant called Pecorino's, I think, which is like their version of Sardi's with the caricatures on the walls and stuff. And we were sitting there for hours. We had this wonderful waitress. She was so good. The food was so good. We had the best, it was like a three-course meal, great desserts, great, like the service was just phenomenal. So she was saying, she's like, this reminds me of the time in 93, 94, visiting Minnesota when her son Mackenzie Aston was doing Iron Will, a Disney movie. And she was, her, Mac, and Mike, and some of the cast went out to dinner afterwards. And they had a great server who was just so wonderful, spent hours, doting on them, whatever. And by the way, the other celebrities there were David Ogden Stiers, who was a friend of Anna's, a former and future co-star of hers, Kevin Spacey, and Kevin Pollak.
Okay.
The waitress very nicely asked, I don't know if it was the menu or just a piece of paper or whatever, but she asked Mackenzie for an autograph. And I remember her saying, well, he was raised by me, so of course he, gave an autograph. Then she came to me, and I, of course, sent her an autograph. Then it came to Spacey, and he refused. He said, I can't believe you have the nerve to ask. He was like yelling at the waitress. And she said, you could just tell, like, the waitress was horrified. So to kind of cut the tension, Kevin Pollak said, give it to me, I'll sign it. Like that. Then the last person was David Ogden Stiers, who did the same thing as Kevin Spacey did. And then which caused her in front of the waitress to say, "You guys are fucking assholes." She's like, "This poor woman has been working her ass off for the last 3 hours for us, and all she's asking is for you to write your name on a piece of paper, and you can't even do that. I'm ashamed to be the same table with you." She
Anna
said.
said that?
Yeah, yes,
Oh,
yes. So she gave
love
it good to Spacey. She didn't live to see what happened with him later, but
it.
she knew he was an asshole. So
Love it.
yeah, yeah. So that's an exclusive story to you that didn't
Thank
make the book. Yeah. So again, some like I was getting back to some of the stories are not as spicy, but they didn't need to be necessarily. She was just
Right.
given her experiences,
Right.
on these sets with these people that mostly she really looked up to. And there was things too that I was finding out, like with Lucille Ball. There was a resolution with her, where they made up before the whole scandal with Disney when she was dating Disney Jr. Many years earlier that before Lucy died, they had an understanding. They saw each other at a public event, and Lucy grabbed her by the hand and squeezed it, and she just, without saying any words, knew that all was forgiven, that they were good. She cried a lot during that chapter. She cried most at the Sharon Tate chapter. She was very
Mm.
nervous about that chapter. She looked up and said, Sharon, I hope I'm doing right by you, before we started. And she did. I mean, it's a a great tribute to her, that chapter, I feel. She always said she felt responsibility for people who had passed on, whether she was playing them in a movie or whatnot, or talking about them. And I felt that same responsibility since Anna had passed on by the time this book got published to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite story from this book? Is there one that like specifically that go back and read sometimes maybe
Um,
even?
I just mentioned some. The Sharon Tate one was one
Yeah.
of them. Lucille Ball would be another one. some of the stuff again that she really, I don't want to say I wanted to make her cry, but that she really felt a lot of responsibility for telling these stories, Anne Bancroft being one of them, and stuff that even I didn't know. Like I was saying, some things that surprised me, impressed me a lot. But yeah, I'd say Anne Bancroft, Sharon Tate, Lucille Ball. Those are Gloria Vanderbilt, who wrote the foreword, who was so nice to do that. I never met her, but she was so nice. I reached out to her. This is a cool story. We talked about her doing the foreword. And it's like, I didn't want to bother her. She's, well into her 80s, whatever. So I thought of somebody else, who I'm not going to name, though people might be able to do the math. I asked her, would you be willing to write it? She's like, yes, of course, I'd love to. I'm waiting in over a year. I never got it. And
Really?
then it was like one excuse after another. And then it was just that she wasn't going to do it, that she wasn't well or something, had an accident doing a play or something like that. And whatever. And I'd waited, patiently. I kept giving her like deadlines nicely and stuff like that. And I never got the forward from her. So I'm like, you know what? Screw that. So a Facebook friend of mine recently posted that Dina Merrill had passed. And he'd said about one time that he saw them dining together at a restaurant, and then many years earlier in New York. And someone had posted in the comments that, did you see Gloria Vanderbilt has her own art collection? She has her own Instagram page at her art collection now. I'm like, hmm. So, because I asked Mike and he didn't have her contact information, Gloria Vanderbilt's. So I'm like, hmm. So I went to the page and I wrote a DM on there, and I introduced myself, told what the project was, and we'd love Ms. Vanderbilt if she could possibly write the forward because we know her and Anna were very, very close, as there's a chapter in the book about it.
Mhm.
I got a reply from her assistant, the next day asking if I could forward the chapter on Gloria, to her to read first before giving me an answer. So, sure. So I sent it. Then a day or two later, I got the reply saying Ms. Vanderbilt would love to write the forward. She was, I think, 93 or 94 at the time. But the other one, who was 40 years younger, couldn't find whatever. So anyway, I got the forward in like 2 or 3 days. And it's short but very sweet. I mean, very heartfelt, like pulls at the heartstrings. It's only a few sentences, but that's all it needed to be.
Right.
And the fact that Gloria Vanderbilt was so classy, I think I call her in the book class personified, or she was, to be able to do that. And then as a thank you, I sent her advanced copies of the book, and I had copies of some photos of them together that I have in the book copied and sent to her in frames. And she said she framed it. So I got a wonderful email from Gloria Vanderbilt, thanking me after reading the book, the advanced copy, said what an important book it was, and to thank me for keeping Anna's legacy alive, something along those lines. And it was a very heartfelt email, and thanked me for the pictures and that she framed them in her library or wherever, whatever room she put them in. That meant a lot to me. And it's funny because after she passed, a few years later, I didn't realize he spilled the beans, when he's being interviewed about his late mother. Anderson Cooper said that he was the assistant. She didn't have an assistant. He was the one answering her things. So I was actually talking to Anderson Cooper, little did I know. So, yeah, so that was pretty cool because I remember I got the email for her forward. It was from his personal email address. So, yeah, so that was pretty cool. And that meant a lot too. That meant a lot. And Gloria Vanderbilt's name was just so classy, I think, on our book.
Oh
So
yeah.
Anna would be thrilled. So she really would have been. So it all happened for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a story in the book, and I remember I was listening to it at work, which is why I had the audiobook. And I'm
Huh?
not, little secret, I wasn't supposed to, but
I won't tell.
um and one of her stories, like I just started tearing up at work. She was talking about how she was excited for her 70s because she thought that that would be a like her career would have a boost because of that age range. And it just hit me. I was like, she wasn't planning on going. She had plans, and that just hit me. And I was like at
For your
work.
listeners, she died at 69.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she
Yeah.
never made it to 70. Yeah, that part is the hardest part for me. That one line that you just mentioned, and you're
Mhm.
the first person to ever bring that up to me that I can recall. That is the hardest part for me. The most emotional part for me in the whole book, for me personally, is that one line there
Yeah.
about how she's looking forward to seeing her career in the 70s.
Hmm.
I think she was hoping for maybe like a Betty White boost, something like that.
Yeah.
Or, now would be like a Jean Smart boost. Yeah, that makes me very, very sad because she was not ready. There is a line in there too saying that she would, she wants to keep acting to the very end that she'll die with her boots on or something like that. Yeah, she was not planning on this,
Yeah.
but she was in pain when I was doing the interview. She was in a lot of pain, but she forged on anyway. But I mean, I think there is something I write in the book about how we had to go to her bedroom from the couch and she had to put a heating pad on because
Yeah.
she
With her binky.
right. Oh yeah, the cigarette, the
Yeah.
e-cigarette. Yeah, she had finally quit smoking. I see pictures and video of her after that. Again, I never saw her in person after that, and there was just a big decline in that year and a half. And Mike kept me very well updated on things, so I knew what was going on. It was not a shock. It was a shock, but it wasn't a shock today when the day came. She'd been in the hospital for a few days, and the day before, he had said something about how it looked like she was going to turn around. It was around St. Patrick's Day in 2016. Something was going to turn around, like she seemed to be doing better that day, that Sunday. And then Monday, he sent me all this stuff of that it looked like it was almost time. And I'm
Mm.
like, what? I remember being in the grocery store and I read that and it just jolted me so much that I left my groceries and just left. I just left the shopping cart in the aisle and just left. I couldn't deal with it. Called a friend, was on the phone with him for like therapy support for a
Mm.
few hours. And I'm like, holy shit, this might actually happen like soon. And it so that's Monday night. And Tuesday, Mike said he would let me know any updates. I had a feeling to keep my phone on that night, but I think I may have clicked the wrong thing where it was still on silent or something on the side of the iPhone, and I didn't get the call on time. But I remember, and people are gonna think I made this up, that I'm full of shit, but I swear in Anna's memory that this is true. That around 1:30 in the morning, your time, Pacific time, Eastern here, around 4:30 or so, I woke up. I'd fallen asleep eventually. I woke up and had these horrible cramps, and I just really just had this big, like it just felt like hell. I just really like it's just something that just made me feel sick. Though I didn't vomit, I felt sick. And a few hours later, I eventually went back to sleep, and then a couple hours later, I saw a missed call from Mike on my phone. And again, I didn't realize it was on silent. I called him right back, and she had passed. And she had passed pretty much at the exact time when I was feeling those pains. So a few hours earlier. So it was, yeah. And I just remember, like, I was here in my bedroom, and she had been to my house once before. I had pictures of her in this room, which is pretty cool back in 2011. And the Japanese Me Natalie poster I'm pointing at right there, I just remember because the picture we have together is posed in front of that, right in that same spot. I just remember looking at that and just like kind of feeling her aura around me here and just be she had been here and a few years earlier and just just I didn't break down the phone with Mike. I thanked him, whatever. I was just in shock, though I was
Yeah.
expecting it. You're still in shock. You're still not fully prepared. Same when my mom died a few years later. Like I'm just, what's going to happen, but it doesn't fully prepare you for the actual event.
Yeah.
Uh, and I didn't cry all day when Anna died. I was too busy. Once it hit the news, her son Sean wanted to break the news, so I didn't like post anything or anything like that. Once it hit, and again, I had the Facebook page at the time, and people who knew me, I was getting phone calls. I was inundated with texts and messages and phone calls and whatnot, as if my own family member died. It only hit me later on. I was at my boyfriend's, and I was watching the news, and I also saw my phone that like she was the number one story on Twitter that day. And for someone who felt like she was out of the limelight for a while, that felt her career wasn't the greatest the last several years and, wish she had more exposure and stuff like that.
You
That's
mean
when I
her? She felt that?
he felt that, yes.
Oh.
So I felt like almost like she was vindicated in a way because she was the number one story on Twitter, which was huge, the trend number one trending story on Twitter, which I think she would have gotten a kick out of. I think she would have liked it. And that's when I broke down and lost it. And I'm like, see, Anna, like they cared about you. They really do love you like that. And that's when I finally lost it and broke down and got to have my ugly cry. And the first of many. Then the following year, every award show where they do a tribute, the in memoriam, I'd lose it then too when they'd have her picture or whatever. It just, yeah, it's still. I mean, it's almost 10 years now. I mean, I think of her every single solitary day, and that's not hyperbole.
Yeah.
Um, and she's just like so much a part of me that, and again, I'm trying, and I think the book was the best way I can to have her live on, her stories live on. Like I told her, I didn't know how, like what a like a almost like a prophet thing what's going on, where I said, like, one day you're going to be gone and these stories will live on. I didn't know that the book would be published before she died. So, I mean, sorry, after she died. So yeah. But I love nothing more than, like you were saying before, like to introduce new people to her and make a new fan even after her passing. Because as she once said on the Rosie O'Donnell show, she said, and I think I'm quoting her directly, "This is the magic of what we get to do, is that it does live on."
Oh, I
Think
love
about no other profession really does that, like writing does do that, writers do that, but really with people in film and TV, I mean that lives on, it does. I mean, we could watch Lucille Ball from 75 years ago and it still lives on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
knowing how much of this book was your doing, I really appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
As
Thank
a
you.
fan, this book, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you, it is one
I
of
know.
the most valued things of her of her because it just it captures everything. It's the most complete encyclopedia basically of her.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I do take that serious. Thank you so much. I take that to heart. That was the whole intent. That was even before she passed away was to get, a nice complete thing. And not every single movie's talked about in there, not every single actor she worked with obviously talked about it. She had too much of a career, 6 decades, to do all that, but we got a huge chunk of it in there.
Right.
So, of course, there's even all these years later, I'm like, oh, I wish we talked about Amityville or something like that, or whatever we did. So, like whatever. I'm like, I wish we did every single one, but it just wasn't possible. But the experience I had with her, and then after her passing, the things like this, interviews, book signings I've done, where people just come up to me, and I don't take it lightly that I hope this doesn't sound conceited, but I don't take it lightly because largely because of me, her final words to her public are out there.
Yeah.
Because I fought like hell for this thing to be published, and and it was my brainchild and all of that. And I'm very, 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 I've never worked harder on any single thing in my entire life, and I'm very proud of it. When my mother died, I buried her with a copy of the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's something I've never told anyone before. Um, I signed to her, to my mom. She was alive, but she had dementia pretty badly, so she didn't know of the book, though she was still alive when it came out. But yeah, I buried it with her, and I know she would have been proud, if she had the mental capacity at the time to know better. Yeah, it does mean a lot, and whenever anybody comes to me, I've had some coworkers recently read it and have me sign it, bring it in for me to sign or whatever, and it just it's just a kick to me. It's pretty cool. And to have a coworker was saying to me today, he's like, sometimes I forget. She was saying to me, sometimes I forget that you knew her, because I didn't know this coworker when I knew Anna. It's just really cool that you have like this other life that it's not like I talk about it constantly at work or anything, but people find it pretty cool to find out that I have a book and there's another side of me that they don't see at work, all the time. So, and I think Anna would look down and think, good job. I think we did it. We made a good team and we made a nice book together.
Yeah.
After she passed, like it took me a long time to listen to those audio again because I didn't want. I remember seeing after she passed for a long time. After seeing her photo didn't bother me, but any hearing her voice bothered me. So for a good 6 months, I couldn't watch anything of hers after she passed. It just hurt too much. I
Yeah.
remember, of all things, it was an old game show from 1980 that I finally, where she wasn't like the main, it was a bunch of celebrity panel called Chain Reaction. And that was like a baby step to me to get over that.
Because I know the last time you saw her was working on the book. When was
Right.
the last time you talked to her?
I talked to her on the phone about something with the book in May of 2015. So that was almost a year before she passed. That was the last time I spoke to her on the phone. We'd go back and forth, emails, texts, that kind of thing. The last like message she had for me, I guess,
Mhm.
was that, as I mentioned before, my mother had dementia for a lot of years, Lewy body dementia, and in February, or it could have been March, I think it was February of 2016, so about a month-ish or so before Anna passed away, my mother, this is a story I never told. My mother stopped me. She tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "Who is your mother?" She asked me, which again broke my heart. I cried. I said, "You are," and left the room and crying.
Mhm.
So, something, I don't know why. I just thought Anna would be a good sympathetic ear for that. I just needed to tell somebody, and I thought, who better? So I texted Anna that, and she wrote back something along the lines of, "She's your mother. She's always going to be your mother," something like that, to paraphrase. "She'll always be your mother. Remember, always remember that." And that was the last direct communication we had.
What
Yeah.
a great
Yeah.
last communication. Because I mean,
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
wow.
Um,
I'm getting emotional. That's great.
yeah, that was the last thing. Um, and after she passed, Mike, I alluded to before, Mike called me, which was so gracious. He's such a wonderful man, continues to be, that he called me, after she passed. And I said, please, she's already gone by this point. And I said to him on the phone, again, I know I was standing right over there and, well, on the phone. And I said, please tell Anna that I love her. And, yeah, he said, I didn't know he was in the room with her still. He was
Oh,
in the hospital room. I didn't know that until he said, Anna, Bill says that he loves you, and yeah, I'll get a little emotional with that.
yeah.
But yeah, that meant a lot. That will always mean a lot to me. No matter what, that will mean the world to me. And I'm very glad that a few weeks later, I got to go to her memorial in Idaho there. Mike wanted me to have something of hers because he's like, I know she would want you to have something of hers. Why don't you pick something out? I felt I was very happy to hear that. But at the same time, I didn't want to be like, like a garbage picker. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't want to be like that. I thought it was kind of tacky would have been. So I thought about it. I remembered, and it's a little bit in the book too, in the Helen Hayes chapter, that there was a pin of a red rose, of a single red rose. And her and Helen Hayes, for background, did a TV show called One Red Rose for Christmas in the late 50s that was very well received. And it was Anna's mother's favorite thing of anything she ever did, even above The Miracle Worker. Now, I don't have a copy of it, but I have got to see it at the
I was
museum.
gonna ask, is that lost or okay?
I don't think the Beverly Hills one near you is there anymore, the Paley Center, but it's in the Paley Center, New York. Yeah.
Okay.
So you could
All
view
right.
it there. It's wonderful. It was a US Steel Hour episode from 58, and they did it again in 59. So when Anna got her star only 21 years ago in 2004, when she got her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, she wore the pin
Oh,
for her mom and for Helen Hayes as well on her lapel. And I asked, it's just costume jewelry, monetarily it's not worth much, but I knew the story behind it and how powerful that was and how much it meant to her. So I asked if you could find that rose pin, like that would be what I would love to have. So he said he looked all over for it, all over for it, and then the night before the memorial, he found it in a pocket, and gave it to me. Yeah,
wow.
and so I have it. Should have brought it over here, but yeah. I haven't. I keep meaning to put in a shadow box frame with a picture of her because I was there for the Star Walk of Fame. I was at the after party and everything, so I have a picture of her, of me with her wearing it and stuff. So, yeah, that means a lot to me that he left me with that too, and the blessing, of course, to forge on with the book because legally I need his blessing, but more than that, like, I emotionally I wanted his blessing, not just legally. So, to continue on. A very gracious man that the love of her life, and I'm glad they had those 30 years together. Yeah, that means a lot to me too. So, yeah. I People have asked me over the years, and I don't know why I've always been hesitant about it, to write a book about our friendship. I don't want anybody to think, oh, he's trying to make a buck on her or anything like that. You know what I mean? But like some of the stories like I've told you today, like there's some great stories in there too, not just the showbiz stuff
Yeah.
that's it's in the book we did together. But we had a great, very emotional, very beautiful friendship for, I don't know, 16, 17 years, whatever it was. You know, we got in contact when I was 17. She died right before I turned 36. So, for a big chunk of my life there, there is a book in there. There's a book in
Yeah.
me. And with both my parents having memory problems, my father currently, I worry about maybe I'll forget things. I don't know at some point. So I should write some of this stuff down, probably whether or not I publish it or not.
Yes.
But I should because I have a good memory. Like I remember, some of these stories I'm telling you about like they were yesterday. But yeah, I probably should at some point. I would want Mike's blessing, I think, for that too. And again, show him any manuscript if he was concerned that there would be some, if you want anything omitted from it, fine. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cool, unique thing we had going on there. She and I
Yeah.
did. It was, again, we were different generations. Like I said, someone of my parents' generation, not mine, but there was just this connection somehow, and it was what it was, and it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope you do write down your memory, even if you don't ever publish it. I mean, I would love to read the book because even if someone's not a fan of Patty Duke, the story of, forgive me if this sounds crass, but like the little gay boy meeting his idol and then becoming like
True,
friends and work, like
true.
that's a fantasy that we would all vicariously love to,
She
like that's one of the
was
reasons why I'm
so,
interviewing you.
she was so like, I mean, obviously with Valley Dolls and just her whole career, I mean, she was so like loved the gays so much. I don't know if you've ever seen the Sparkle Patty Sparkle, like the
Oh,
whole
I
thing.
have it. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, that's right. We were selling it. You may have bought it there.
Yeah.
She just loved the gays so much. And I remember when I met my boyfriend Vinny, who I'm with almost 13 years now. We'd only been dating like 6 weeks or something at the time, and it was at a convention, and I brought him with me. He was like, "Holy shit, Patty Duke," kind of thing. He didn't know much. He knew who she was, but didn't know much about her. You're younger than me, and she met him, and then she took me aside, and she said, "I really like him." And then there's a beat. Don't fuck it up. so, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah. So and then again, he was invited to, like to the house. We have pictures that like I mentioned before, doing her Christmas tree. There's a picture of Anna asked to take this picture, not me, of the three. She's in her robe. We're in like our pajamas, and we're with five of their dogs, holding them in front of the
Oh,
Christmas tree, sitting on the floor. And that was my Christmas card one year.
I
So,
love it.
yeah. So I mean, that was really, and again, he came with me for the whole book thing too, and was very supportive of that. Took time off of work to go there with me and stuff, and yeah, she was just so wonderful with me and us, and. It's still, I keep using the word surreal, but like it still is, I still can't fathom
No,
that.
it is surreal. Again, that's why I'm interviewing you. It is surreal.
Yeah.
The whole story is
Yeah.
so
I,
like,
I don't talk about it so much anymore, because the book's been out for a while, so I'm not doing that many interviews anymore. It's been out almost 8 years now. But when I do look back on it, it just is. And I have to say, this sounds corny as hell, but it's true. If I'm in a bad mood about something or something's bothering me, and I can't get to sleep or something like that, like I'll close my eyes and just think about how lucky I've been with all of this.
yeah,
It'll, make me feel a little better about the world and about things. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. When I found out she passed away, I found out I wasn't watching the news or anything. I was getting ready for work, and my friend, who God bless him, Patty Duke is not his demographic. But I have made him watch so many movies of hers. Like,
There you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
God bless him. He has sat
Same.
through, like,
Yeah.
he, he has sat through Always Remember I Love You. He has sat through,
God. Oh,
um,
talking about a movie that made me cry, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he texted me and he said, because I haven't heard from you, I'm assuming you don't know. And I went, know what? And then he told me. And I just went like, oh, I had to go to work. I didn't break down or anything, but what I did do is as soon as I got off work, because I worked at that time about a half an hour from Hollywood, I went and got flowers and I drove out to her star and I put flowers down on her star.
It's nice. Thank you for doing that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really nice. Yeah, yeah. I remember seeing a lot of photos of that at the time and video footage of them, in the news or whatever, of the people putting flowers there. And
Yeah.
like her granddaughter said to her when she got the star, she said this during the ceremony. She says, people, will know who you are when they look at the star. People will remember you. Yeah, and again, thank you for doing that. That was
Yeah.
one part of me doesn't feel like her death got enough coverage news-wise, but of it, what it did, I think she really would have appreciated.
I do always feel that for what she is, she's painfully underrated.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I don't think she got the due that she deserved.
Yeah. She
Um,
got the awards and stuff like that, but why
I
she
mean,
didn't have a bigger feature film career or things like that. I
yeah,
think location later words in the '90s it didn't matter because all the movies were done in Canada, so it
yeah,
didn't matter. But then after the TV movie genre more or less died for a while,
yeah.
like now with all this streaming, I think she'd probably be working all the time.
I know, I know.
Yeah,
I think about
yeah.
that all the
And I
time.
see a movie or something of an older actress playing a part. I'm like, God, God damn it, she would have been great in that part, like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the second you said hacks, I'm like, oh my God, there would have
yeah,
been something for her. But
yeah,
yeah, you end the book by saying that you mentioned that she always kind of sometimes wondered if people forgot about her.
yeah.
And when I heard that, I kind of wanted to, in any way possible, participate in making sure that's not true. And that's, I make those videos. Every once in a while, I'll make a video about one of her movies that I recommend. I'm doing this podcast.
They're fun. I looked through your Instagram. Yeah, they're funny. Like the two on a bench when I'd seen it. Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, oh, he likes a lot of the TV movies like me, not just hers. But like I grew up
Yeah,
on.
I love TV movies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how you're in your 30s, right?
39. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, it's always gets a kick. You're that much younger than me, but it always like I always thought I was like the cutoff. Like there's hardly any such thing as anybody younger than me. A fan kind of thing. So I always like to hear that. Like that's always cool for me.
Yeah.
At least younger, but yeah, yeah. She got a kick out of the age difference. She really did. I remember she said to me, "What are you looking for for a mother or something like that?" Like the first time, in Canada, or grandmother. That's what she said, grandmother. And I'm like, "You're a year younger than my own mother, so never mind grandmother." But I think she got a kick out of that, especially early on. This kid in high school or freshman in college. You
Yeah.
know, I always use the word obsessed when I talk with friends, but I don't want that to sound creepy. But
No, I understand. Because
infatuated in
nowadays,
a healthy way,
yeah.
stalkerish kind of way. But yeah, she was the real deal. It's really hard, like losing someone in your life that's like that was that genuine. And again, like to think of all the other things she would have gone on to do, afterwards.
Mhm.
Like the book, she wanted to take me on tour with her and promote it. She said she would have done an audiobook for this book. I remember her saying that. She's like, they asked me for the other two. She's like, I don't know why, but I turned them down. But she's like, this book I want to do an audiobook for. So also that got me to think, okay, I'll agree to the audiobook proposal. I didn't want an audiobook because she had passed by the
Mhm.
time before it was published. So the publisher, about 2 years after the book came out, came to me and asked, and I said no, I don't want an audiobook. And then he said that Kathy Garver who had written other books, written her own books for the same publisher, was willing to do it. And I'm still, let me think about it. That's really cool, but let me think about it. And then that night, somebody who I knew from Facebook messaged me a DM. They said they had a friend who was seeing impaired and they wanted to read my book, but they couldn't. So they were wondering if there was an audio of it. And I'm like, that's the sign from Anna
That's the
that I
sign.
need to do it. Because again, this is the woman who was made famous for playing Helen Keller. So, okay, all right, let's do it. So, yeah. I'm just glad, again, like shows like your show here, whatever audience we can reach, just, if you don't know her, like, just type it in YouTube or something.
Mhm.
There's a lot of her movies on Tubi that you can watch for free streaming, so just get some knowledge of her. She left behind a great legacy, and again, I don't want that ever forgotten. So I feel it's like a duty of mine. I took it upon myself to try to keep her legacy alive as much as I can. This is a point I want to bring up. I have my picture with her holding the Oscar and
Oh
everything.
my
And
God.
at the time, I was 33, which is the age she was when she won the Emmy for the Miracle Worker remake, playing Amy Sullivan. And I just said, like, God, by the time you're my age, like, what have I done? You've won every award here. You won by the time you were 33. And without missing a beat, she said, yeah, but that was a very unhappy person,
Wow.
which put things in perspective a lot.
Yeah.
That wasn't like, that was genuine. That wasn't just, oh, let's make him feel better. But, yeah, yeah. Without missing a beat, she said that, which, well, I'll never forget that. Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why I feel so sad about her passing, there are other people I'm a big fan of and stuff, and I've never felt that
Mhm.
way. It's because it really does feel like the world lost something. And,
Even if they didn't know it, they did.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Even
world
if they
lost
didn't
something.
know it, yeah. Mental health advocate, a brilliant actress, a funny, great woman. She would have been great doing more comedies. Again, like, she was just funny as hell.
That's what I said in the Two on a Bench video that like she
Yeah.
doesn't do a lot of comedy, so it's fun to see her just be goofy.
Right. Right.
Well,
But what we have, is good. And as she would say, well, some of my movies were unintentional comedies. But yeah, but like Valley of the Dolls or whatever. But
yeah.
and again, that kind of she never really loved Valley of the Dolls to the end, but she learned to appreciate it, and she loved what the gay audience brought her around to, at least being able to appreciate it for what it was.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I understand that because, like, when I try to introduce someone to Patty Duke, I never start with Valley of the Dolls because it's a fun movie,
it
but
is
it's
fun.
not a good movie.
Right,
And
exactly, right. So she once said to me, "It's the biggest piece of shit I've ever done," but which I disagree with. But there were a few, look what's happened to Rosemary's Baby. I think was the biggest piece of shit she ever did. But I
uh,
think in the book she mentions that was a purely for the money, kind of thing.
yeah,
But even Curse of Black Widow, I think is fun. Look what's happened to
yeah,
Rosemary's Baby. I think is just boring, and they kill her off so soon.
yeah. She's like, you
Yeah,
killed Rosemary.
I know that's whether she's playing the part or not doesn't matter. I mean, they let
Yeah,
her go up on some cockamamie bus a half hour into the movie, so that's just stupid. But yeah, if it were later, if she had lived longer and we were able to do like things like this together, her and I, like a Zoom thing, again, I would love to be able to watch movies with her, get her reactions to things. I think we would have had a lot of fun. I think she would have been up to doing that. And I know she would have loved to do Cameo. I know she would have loved to have been, to do those kind of things. Yeah.
oh, oh, I would have loved that. Oh,
Yeah.
well, again, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for telling me so much more about someone that I truly love. That I know more now. This has
I'm
just been,
glad you got to meet her though, because most
yeah,
haven't. So
yeah,
I'm really, 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 really glad that you got to meet her. I didn't know that till we started. So
yeah.
uh, that was really, I'm glad you were able to make that. And again, she had a really nice time at that show. And for last time she saw William Shallert at that show.
Yes, there was a reunion there.
Yeah, but it was great. It's great. Thank you for the experience with this, and it
Thank
was great
you.
to chat. You seem like an old friend to me, so it was
Thank
a very
likewise.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, take care.
Take care. You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.
I can't thank William J. Jankowski enough for taking the time to chat with me. This was truly an incredible interview for me to do, and like we said in the interview, I hope doing this helps keep Patty Duke's name relevant. If you want to assist in that, I strongly encourage everyone listening to check out her library of film and television roles, and please, check out her memoir, In the Presence of Greatness, My 60-Year Journey as an Actress. It's available in, I think, every format possible. Hardback, paperback, ebook, even audiobook, where it's read by Patty Duke's friend, Kathy Garver. I hope you enjoyed listening to this interview as much as I enjoyed doing it. This is Vid. Until next time.